Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Duda, how upcoming Google changes and COVID are affecting local websites in 2021. My name is Lizzie, and I'm a Senior Account Manager for Locology, and I will be your host for today's event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with the presentation within 24 hours of the broadcast. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. Our speaker today is Christopher Carpy. Chris is a marketer and technologist who is the VP of Brand and Product Marketing at Duda. Prior to joining Duda, Chris was at GoDaddy for nearly 6 years and headed up their content marketing and community efforts globally. A veteran of both startups and the enterprise, Chris has a deep track record in developing marketing, customer community, and evangelist programs for brands such as Adobe, H&R Block, and Aruba Networks, while holding executive positions at Ants Eye View and Edelman Digital, and he was co-founder and CEO at Serato. He currently lives in the Bay Area with his family. So without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Chris.
Great, thank you, Lizzie, and thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day today to participate in this webinar. Just a quick bit for folks who might not be familiar with Duda yet. Duda is the professional website builder you can call your own, and we're really focused on working with agencies and SaaS platforms and freelancers and other professionals who are building sites on behalf of and for small businesses and other folks who really need, your expertise in bringing their web presence up to date. Really been working a lot on product and also really been working a lot on things like customer support and making sure that the community is fully supported. And we were super stoked that we were just ranked #1 for most likely to recommend by G2, and we're up in the in the leader quadrant for G2, and our absolutely unbelievably talented support team actually just won, we found out last week, the Gold Stevie Award for customer sales and support in the technology industry. And so it's been great to be with Duda for the last year or so as I have been here. The things that we're going to talk about today are a couple of fold. I mean, it's been a weird year. We all know this, and especially if we're out there working, either on our own behalf or working with clients and customers, there have been a lot of changes, and there are going to be a lot of other changes that are coming down the pike as well. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we're seeing from Duda's side with respect to local business website strategy going into 2021. There are going to be a number of new Google ranking factors that are coming in as well. And so I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply into those, because these are sort of new things for Google, and the way that they're rolling it out is fairly unique compared to the way that they have done it in the past. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen in changes in consumer website activity over the last year or so, and then some takeaways, some, not just, a dude talking, but some things that you can actually look at and try and implement, again, either for yourselves or for your clients going forward, based on some of these things that are likely coming down the pike. And of course, we are going to have time at the end for Q&A, and I can stick around as long as folks want to be chatting about things. So first thing is really, okay, so what is changing for local business websites, and what's changing from a strategy perspective as we go into 2021? So really, first and foremost, updates and communication with customers is key. So if you have a website or you're managing a website for someone else, customers are looking to the website and looking to all the resources to understand what is going on, what is happening with opening and closing and capabilities and protocols and all of those different types of things. And so one of the big things that has really come to the forefront over the last year and has really accelerated this, the trend's been going on for a couple of decades at this point, but really we compressed a decade into about a year last year in this movement from sort of brochureware websites up through interaction and transaction. So websites, the brochureware stuff, fine, but customers want to understand what is going on. They want the latest up-to-date news. And again, we'll look at a couple of examples on that. And they want to be able to actually do things and use this as an engagement and interaction channel as well, not just a place to find out information as a new a place where you just look as a reference type site. Need to have dynamic information, and so things need to be connected and set up in such a way that either the site owners themselves can change things dynamically and very quickly, or better yet, the site is actually connected up and the pages on the site are dynamically generated and connected up to, it can be a database, but it can be things as simple as a Google Sheets or an Airtable, and dynamic information, dynamic imagery, all of those things are just flowing into the site, and the site actually becomes a living and breathing organism, as opposed to just a place that, okay, we did the site redesign 3 years ago, we're done. Those days are done, they are over, and we really need to be thinking about how does this become an engagement channel, an interaction channel, a way for customers to interact with the business in a way that helps them get to their goals. A big part of this also is, over the last year, it's really become clear that the processes and the interaction and the protocols of the business matter. So how are they doing things in this new strange environment that we're working through at various different speeds, especially in different parts of the world and different parts of the country in the US? Things are all moving at different speeds on a city by city, county by county, state by state basis. And so being able to make sure that the website is representing all of the latest and greatest up-to-date information, and how the business is surfacing its processes and how it is interacting with its customers, that really matter. And again, this isn't just a brochureware. It's not just a thing that is set it and forget it. It really needs to be part of an ongoing iterative process and an evolutionary process. And so really, kind of the key takeaway on the strategy here is thinking about, okay, how do we keep things up to date? How do we manage them over time? How do we change rapidly? How do we evolve as these new types of needs from the customer side, but also technical and sort of civic needs come in as well. So one of the big things that is coming down the pike this year is Google has a couple of really big changes that are notable, and they're going to intersect with this trend of things that we have seen from COVID, and actually really change things for local websites. The biggest thing, and sort of take anything away from the time that we have together today, really thinking about the fact that Google is now really, putting a stake in the ground and saying user experience matters, and not just what's on the site, but how users interact with the site. That is a critical component of what is coming down the pike from Google in 2021. And there are two different aspects of this. One is coming up in the short term, one is coming up in the medium term. So in the short term, mobile first indexing is going to be officially a thing. We should have all been thinking about this since probably 2016 or so, but if a site is not mobile optimized, mobile friendly, and is not the thing that is being indexed by Google, Google probably isn't going to pay attention to it. So if you only have a site that is available on desktop, or you only have a site that is optimized for desktop, chances are you're going to see some badness in Google rankings and such as a result of that. That's coming up again over the next month or so. In May is a big thing though, and Google is going to really look at this user experience concept through a lens of some particular metrics that they're bringing in, that they're grouping together into the concept of what they are calling core web vitals. And they're looking at a number of different aspects of interaction between a user and a website and their experience, and they're taking their measurement of how well a site supports these user experience metrics and driving that into all of the different ranking factors that they have. So as we know, Google does have hundreds of different ranking factors that they all sort of put into their, their magic black box, and outcomes, your position 1 or position 10 or position 100. But these 3 new factors that are coming in under the rubric of core web vitals are going to be key. Google started teasing it about a year ago. I think it was May of last year, plus or minus, and they have already signaled these are going to go live and actually start fitting into their rankings starting in May of this year. So there are 3 different core things in these core web vitals that we need to be thinking about. And then there are a couple of other aspects that we need to think about as well. So again, from Google, what they're saying is they care about page experience, and from their standpoint, page experience, it's a whole set of different signals that they are using and technology that they are using to measure how users perceive the experience of interacting with a website or a page on that website. And that is above and beyond just the words on the page. So, back in the day, if SEOs were, keyword stuffing, and then, in the last few years, folks have gotten the clue that you actually have to have useful, relevant, detailed, authoritative content on the page. All of those things are still true. You have to have great stuff on there. And above and beyond that, the experience the user has in interacting with that content and getting to that content and being able to absorb and understand that content is something that Google is saying, yep, this stuff is important. And there are 3 different aspects in this rubric of core web vitals that they're looking at. And unfortunately, Google being Google, this stuff is absolutely alphabet soup. So I'm going to dive into that for a second, trying to stay away from the acronyms wherever possible. So the first thing that they have is a thing called LCP, or largest contentful paint. The second is FID, or first input delay, and then CLS is cumulative layout shift. And I'll go into details on each one of those 3, but one of those is really around how long does it take to get stuff onto the page so that users can see it and experience it. The second is around the page itself. How responsive does it seem to the user when they try and do something on the page? And then the third is, how stable is the page from a visual standpoint? Does it seem like things are jumping around on the page, especially on mobile? Or does the page seem to, when it renders, be what the user expects, and they don't have that annoying thing of they're about to go clicking on a button, and just as they're about to click the button, that the ad drops in above it and pushes the button down, and they click on the ad instead, because we all hate when that happens. And so we're trying to make sure that those types of things are managed as well. So for each of these things here, I'm going to dive into all of those. There are a couple of other things that Google has really said are going to be key going into 2021. One, again, mobile friendliness absolutely matters. That's going to be a mandatory thing. Sites, they should all be set up with SSL or TLS at this point, and should be able to be connected to securely over HTTPS with an SSL certificate. And another interesting thing, and again, this gets at all of the different things that we're talking about with respect to experience, is they really don't want intrusive ads. So things, interstitials, popovers, all of those kinds of things. You can't interact with the content if you can't see the content because there's a big old ad sitting over the top of it. So there are things on that side that they are going to be looking at as well. And again, there's a link there if you head to our blog. We've actually broken all of this stuff down as well. So going into the various core web vitals, this first one again is called largest contentful paint, or LCP. And what they are looking for is when a page starts to load, you've got what's on the screen. You've got the viewport that you're looking through, and whether it's on mobile, whether it's on desktop, they want to measure, and they are going to measure how long it takes for the biggest thing on that viewport to get downloaded and render in the browser for the user. It could be an image. It could be a big old block of text. It could be a video. It could be a map that you're putting, in that initial viewport. And you really need to think about that. What they're saying is, from their studies and research that they have done, users expect, especially on mobile again, that the biggest thing that is going to show up on the page when somebody hits a website for the first time should show up and should be rendered within 2.5 seconds or so. Between 2.5 seconds and instantaneously, Google is going to say that's good. If you're between 2.5 seconds and 4 seconds, they are going to rank this particular aspect of Core Web Vitals as kind of need improvement. And if it's over 4 seconds, then they're going to rank it as poor. And so you need to be thinking about making sure that whatever you're doing, you're on a fast server. You have optimized images really on a couple of different dimensions. One is compressing them either yourself before they're uploaded, or working with a infrastructure provider that does that sort of optimization already. Things like having a content delivery network, so these bigger visual assets are being served from somewhere that's geographically closer to where the person on the other end of the browser is trying to load up that screen. These are all things that need to be thought about and can help in tuning this. But again, the big thing to think about here is whatever that big thing is on the home page that is above the fold that's going to be in the viewport, make sure that that thing is optimized so that it loads quickly, because this is one of the 3 big things that Google is going to be starting to look at this year, and is going to start factoring into how well and how highly they rank a site as one of their hundreds of signals that they are working towards. So this is sort of one of 3 of those core web vitals. Second is a thing called first input delay, and this is when you click on the screen or touch on a mobile device, how quickly does the page respond or seem to respond to that input event. And 100 milliseconds, so 1/10 of 1 second, is what Google says, yep, that's good. So if you've got big, slow scripts that are running, or you're making all sorts of calls, or other things are happening that is going to make the page feel laggy, those are things that are going to drive down that page's score based on FID, or first input delay. And so it's, again, pushing things, all sorts of scripts and stuff. You want to push those to the bottom of the page. You want to, again, really look at any external calls that you're doing to everything from Google Analytics to ad networks to Facebook pixels, any of those types of things can potentially make the page feel laggy when somebody interacts with it. And so this is one of the areas that definitely want to start tuning on as well. And then the third of the three from the Core Web Vitals side is this concept of cumulative layout shift, or CLS. And what they're trying to measure here really is what they're calling visual stability. And again, this is the place where the page doesn't want to seem like it's jumping around when it's being loaded. So you don't want buttons moving around. You don't want ads sliding in and pushing things down. You don't want a lazy loaded image to push other stuff out of the way when it finally comes in. And there is, a little bit of art and a lot of bit of science that needs to happen on the back end when the page starts to get rendered, that things are sort of framed in position where they need to be. And then the content in those blocks can get filled in over time, but Google wants buttons to stay where the buttons should stay, and wants the images to stay where the images should stay. And any of that sort of sliding around or moving around of content blocks is going to have a detrimental effect on this CLS ranking. So these are three of the big things that they're going to be looking at, that you really need to start thinking about going into 2021, because in mid-May, or in May, they haven't said exactly where in the month, but in May, they have said this kind of stuff is going to start factoring into their rankings. And so if you haven't started to think about these types of things, or you're not working with a provider that is doing this thinking on the back end and managing a lot of the stuff at the infrastructure level, then you need to definitely start to consider that as well. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So we've got societal things that have been happening and are going to keep happening. We've got technical things that have happened and are going to be coming down the pike very, very rapidly. We've now got also the side of things of how are people changing their behavior when they're interacting with local sites as a result of COVID-19, and probably a lot of this stuff is going to stick going forward as well. So, there have been all of these changes that we've seen. Pretty sure folks would not have predicted a year ago that we're going to have runs on toilet paper and propane heaters, because the way people are interacting with their lives and doing things when going out to businesses are completely changing if they're going out at all. And so there have been these massive sort of structural changes that have come in that have flowed down into how local sites need to be thinking about these things. The first is absolutely, and this gets to the dynamic point that we were talking about earlier, customers expect, visitors expect absolutely up to the minute updates on websites. So it's open and closed status. If it is a place that has the ability for people to hang out for a while, whether it's a restaurant or other similar type of venue, again, at a location by location, state by state, county by county level, knowing the indoor and outdoor availability, or things like wait times, those are all things that people are expecting to be available and want to be able to know. And sites that support these kinds of things correctly and in a timely manner are going to be the types of things that they really, really, really want to be able to see on their websites. Other things like protocols as well. So what is a site's protocol for occupancy percentage, disinfection, protocols and such, masking rules? Those are all things that folks want to be able to just look on the website and see what those things are. We had one customer that had a indoor sand volleyball venue that they had set up, and they had details on there of what their protocols were, how many people could be inside, what routes people would take in the building, going from the door to their court. It got really, really, really detailed, and the ability to share and communicate that information easily and dynamically through the website is what people are expecting now. And so sites need to be able to support that kind of ease of change of information as things are changing, literally daily and weekly now in a lot of geographies. For anything that has a physical component as well as a digital component, being able to communicate and support different types of fulfillment as well is a super critical thing. So if it is a physical type of thing, then being able to support and state what are different delivery options? Is curbside pickup available? Can we, track things that are happening? If a thing that was in person is now digital, how do I get access to that thing through, a Zoom window or those types of things? All of those different types of choices, again, should be represented in the website and need to be represented, and people need to evolve their web presence in such a way to support all of these different types of capabilities, because that's what customers expect now. Again, we've collapsed a decade worth of innovation into about a year. And so we're really seeing, some companies positively break away from the pack as a result of their ability to dynamically adapt and implement these changes, and other ones that just have not. The other really interesting thing, and again, crashing a bunch of these different things together, is the fact that there are a whole bunch of new direct from Google options that are available from the search engine results page, and I'll talk through those in a minute as well. But sort of as example, there's a set of stores out there called The Dry Cleaner. I think it's at thedrycleaner.com. And they have done a really good job of being able to state what are their protocols. So if you go to their main site, they've got a pop-up, okay, notice, due to the Ontario lockdown, here's what the new store hours are. Contact your local location here. And if you click through on that, then you can see, oh, okay, here are the different locations that they have. You can actually dig in on any one of those. And it's like, oh, here's the one that is in Hamilton. Here is their set of details, and can actually dive down into the hours at that particular store. And so this is one of those things that really is important for these kinds of multi-location types of chains and such, but also even a single local instance needs to be able to have all of this kind of information absolutely available as well. So there's one other aspect that is really, really, really noteworthy, which is there are now a whole host of direct options that Google is starting to surface on the search engine results page as well that were not historically there, especially if you go back a few years. So if I go and I search, and you can do this, in another window right now, if you search something like Piccolo, Ristorante, Belmore, in Belmore, New York, you are going to see all sorts of things in their information card here. So Google is now starting to surface all of these different things. So if there are things like order pickup and order delivery, actually having the call to action buttons surfaced right there. A number of these things are connecting out into the website as well. So for example, there is the ability to surface menu options and actually state, here is the link to our menu. And you can give Google that URL in Google My Business, and it will link out to the menu on the website. And there are a host of different types of things that can show up in here, and it really depends on business type. If you go in and you're managing a business and state which type it is, Google is going to surface different types of links that you can put into this card that will drive back to different things on the website as far as COVID, COVID operation details, menus, whether different types of pickup and delivery options are available. All of that stuff can start to get surfaced now. And so really, this is one more step that Google is taking into really providing all of this kind of information from the search engine results page. And more of it either needs to connect back into the website directly, and you need to have sort of the structured data set up in such a way that it can do that, or connecting into some of these other third-party fulfillment services as well, order pickup, order delivery, and such. So all of this stuff, we've got really these, three confounding forces of what's happening societally, what's happening for business, what's happening with search, and all of them are crashing onto the customer at the same time, and figuring out how to really provide a great experience for that customer as they are trying to get their jobs done is the thing that is absolutely critical in dialing in web presence as we're getting further into 2021. So distilling all of that down, we needed to sort of put together a checklist of things we want to think about. So number one, making sure that on the website, all of the different available service options, making sure that that is very clear, very accessible, very integrated with processes. So whether it is a restaurant being able to state whether they have dine-in or takeout, if it is somebody who is delivering physical goods, whether they have regular delivery or contactless delivery or curbside pickup, all of those things need to be stated on the website as well. If perhaps if it is a coaching service or a fitness studio, what their online classes are. We're seeing a huge uptick in things like membership sites this year, where people are you've got the general website that gives information, and then you can actually sign up for other types of things, either online classes or special availability and such for customers who have either joined the site explicitly or paid extra for those things and such. All of those kinds of service options need to be baked into the website now. Process becomes super important as well. So all of these things around having integrated capabilities. So appointment scheduling, again, you want to know that when you show up at a place, you're not going to have to wait outside if it's cold, or you're not going to be going to a place that's super crowded if it's an indoor sort of place. You want to be able to schedule time slots. And so integrating appointment scheduling system with the website, or doing online ordering. Order status tracking is absolutely critical as well. So that helps with the overall customer experience, and that helps with really making sure that the customer has sort of trust and predictability. Oh, okay, this thing that I tried doing online, I know it's actually happening, and you can get a lot of expectations, and especially, we put our, sort of human hat on as opposed to just our, business person hat. There's all sorts of stuff as we are munging together work life and life and kids and pets and all of those things, knowing that Instacart is going to be here or the local delivery is going to be there between 2 and 2:30, and having visibility into that is super, super, super important. Ability to actually deliver capabilities through Zoom widgets and those types of things, absolutely critical as well. Since so many of the different types of inventory and commodities and things that we really kind of took for granted in the past, like Clorox wipes or propane heaters or toilet paper, those are all things that people want to know if they go to a place that they're actually making a trip outside to go do the thing, that they can actually do the thing. And so having inventory and visibility and availability is super important. What the various protocols are is, again, another dynamic thing that's changing day to day, week to week in different geographies. And so being able to update that in real time. And then it seems like a basic thing, but it's kind of really important. Business hours, stuff is changing, during the week, during the weekends, locations, all of those things are changing. And so for the rest of this year and probably going forward, because people seem to expect it now, being able to have all of this stuff easily and dynamically updated is absolutely critical. So if we look at what are sort of the key takeaways of all of these different types of things. So number one, really thinking about that move from brochureware to dynamic and information oriented engagement through the website, and again, up through being able to actually fulfill things and tie with business processes, and being able to do that flexibly and quickly and make those changes, hopefully without having to get a coder involved. Those are critically important. Being able to think from the customer's point of view, what are the capabilities that they need in order to live their lives and do the things that they're trying to do. So appointment scheduling and any of those other kinds of capabilities that they can do to make it easier for the customer, that's all things to be considered as well. All of the different types of core vital concerns. Again, what Google is really, really, really thinking about is customer experience. That is the thing that they are starting to bake into their whole set of feedback mechanisms that they're using when they are measuring how well is a site performing and where should it rank in their rankings. So look at what are you bringing into that site, what kinds of third-party scripts are you doing. Again, making sure that images are reduced in size, both in sort of weight, how many kilobytes or megabytes are those images and videos, making sure that they are sized correctly, making sure that they're small. If that works, that's an okay thing. Being able to make sure that all of the stuff that's on the website is actually getting to the customer's browsers. So working with a reliable provider that handles all of those kind of hosting and CDN types of things. And again, from that user experience standpoint, especially on mobile, thinking about visual stability and doing that especially on mobile, and making sure that images on the page aren't all jumping around and such. And one more sort of technical thing, as we saw on some of the stuff for the couple of websites that we looked at, there is more and more information that if it can be put in a structured fashion into the web page using Google Schema or using Schema, that Google will be able to interpret and sort of parse that out and use it in its various places. Super important. So for example, there's a part of Schema called FAQs, and it's all of the different listings of frequently asked questions. You've got a question and then an answer. And you've seen this on sites, you've seen it on Google, where you've got a list of 3 or 4 of these things. You click on them, they sort of accordion, expand, and then you can see the detailed answer to that question. We actually just dropped a thing yesterday or earlier this week where if you have an FAQ on your site, it's literally a toggle switch. Do I want to generate the schema for this? Yes. And you slide the little toggle switch over, and now Google has a machine readable version of all of that FAQ schema that can then get pulled into all of the different analyses that they're doing. So we see that for FAQs, we see it for business information. Any place you can make it easier for Google's robots to parse things, do that. And again, that is a balance, and it is not a substitute for actually providing the right information, the right kind of content, useful content that actually helps site visitors get their job done. That's always, always number one. and it's sort of a yes and thing. You need to have great content, and the more things that you can do to include this sort of structured information around it to make it really easy for Google to do all of its parsing and slicing and dicing on that, the better. So with that, that's sort of the main set of things. Do want to open it up for Q&A at this point.
Perfect. Let me pull some of these up.
Okay.
So the first question I have is, how is Core Web Vitals different than other updates that Google has done in the past?
Sure. So there are a couple of different aspects to that. The first is, this is really one of the first times that Google has signposted things quite so notably as they have been rolling things out. So, in the past, typically what they would do is they would talk about, what they're doing, kind of when they do it. And what they are doing this time is, instead, they have gone through and said a year in advance, this thing's going to be important. You might want to pay attention to this, and you might want to actually start doing these things. So that's hugely different. There are some different things as well, and we're going to be, we've got some of the stuff on our site right now, but we're going to be putting out more information in the coming months of, what is really the difference between Core Web Vitals and Lighthouse and PageSpeed Insights and web.dev and all the different tools that are out there. And they're all looking at different things. Some things are looking at what they call lab data, where they are measuring sites sort of in a simulated environment. They have other things where they are using what they call RUM, or real user metrics, that look at what actual users were doing on the site, and they're tracking a bunch of those things. So the biggest thing, though, is this seems to be an important one, and we'll see in a few months how much it affects and changes the various rankings on sites. But the fact that Google signposted this a year in advance is a notable departure from a lot of the things that they've done in the past.
All right, great. The next question we have, someone wanted to know if you could elaborate more, talk a little bit more about Google and schema.
Sure. So, this is really an interesting area, and it sort of bridges that bit from what is being seen by users and what's being seen on the search engine results pages, and what needs to be done technically to get that stuff out there. So there are a number of different aspects to schema, and if you go to, I think it's schema.org, it explains all the different ways you can set up structured data for websites, and a lot of this stuff sort of sits one layer down in the code of the page, and whether that stuff is being created and then pasted in to the appropriate sections of the web page code by developer, or if you've got a platform that's managing some of that stuff automatically for you, it is a way of providing structured information. And again, from a business standpoint, this can be everything from hours, open close status, am I temporarily closed, to other things like COVID protocols, to other things like the FAQs that I mentioned before, that all can be structured in such a way that makes it really easy for Google to take that stuff and then either display it in appropriate places in their results, or use it in their ranking algorithms as well. So wherever you can, definitely, if you're an agency or freelancer, help your clients understand schema. If you're a website owner, then understand this stuff, or at least understand that I should be asking the question of folks about this as well. That can then pull that structured information into the site and into the pages in such a way that, down to a location level, all the right stuff is being shown.
Okay, great. And we'll do one more. The last one I have is, how do we check these things for our website? I guess that's kind of general, but
Sure. So there are a number of tools that Google is putting out there. So if you go to web.dev, you can actually put a URL in there and get some analysis of that. If you're using the Chrome browser in the in sort of the developer tools section of that, you can run some analyses as well. And so there are a host of different tools out there, some provided by Google. We're starting to actually even see some of the various SEO tools start to implement and integrate these kinds of Core Web Vitals reports as well. And so it is, it's a thing that you should be doing, should be looking at, and really using to sort of benchmark yourself now, because again, since Google has sort of pre-released this stuff about a year in advance, you can take a look at it now, and then as it goes forward, the types of updates and improvements that you're putting on your website can help hopefully influence and drive those things into those green regions that Google is looking at for the sort of the baseline that they're trying to get everybody to, from how responsive the site is and overall how the user experience on the site is.
okay, great. And if your question was not answered today, someone from Duda will be following up with you to answer those questions. And I just want to thank Chris and the Duda team again. I thought they were great questions and the presentation was great. And just wanted to thank you, Chris, for putting this together for us.
Absolutely. Super happy to, and thank you and Locology for the invitation. And if folks do have any other questions, you can find me via our website at duda.co, or just reach out to me on email or any of the social channels. On all of the socials, I am at ccarfy, and my direct email is chris@duda.co.
Perfect. Just a few more items from Locology before we end today's webinar. You will be able to view today's broadcast along with previous webinars on our website, locology.com. Just navigate to research and resources and drop down to webinars. And you also will receive an email within 24 hours of this broadcast with the file for the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please be sure to visit locology.com and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. I hope everyone has a great day.